So many storylines to get to over the weekend. Mark Williams leads us off today after his return from injury. Coming up next, Locked On Hornets.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. I'm Walker Mail. Catch me on WFNZ Sports Radio 92.7 FM from 12 to 3, and that is Doug Branson. You can find his Substack, Every Hornets Boxscore, on everyhornetsboxscore.com, where he got to write a little bit about Mark Williams this weekend after he returned from his injury. Had not played since March 9th until this first game against the Dallas Mavericks. And Doug, Mark Williams was an absolute beast. It was nice to see that there was not any rust that he needed to knock off. You know, only 21 minutes in the first game, so they were still a little hesitant to go full straight Mark Williams all the way in, 30 minutes playing as much as he did the second go around. But still, even in 21 minutes of action, 13 points for him, 8 rebounds, even a couple of assists, did have the one block. And then the next game against Dallas, that's where he ate up all the rebounds, got 16 of them, 15 points, 1 assist, and finished 5 of 9 from the field. I mean, you love to see Mark come back in and not lose any of the momentum that he had built. In fact, he was kind of declining a little bit, right? Like if you look at the last games that he had played against the Knicks, he'd only grabbed 3 rebounds. Against the Pistons, where he got hurt, he only played 11 minutes. So he's actually kind of somewhat finishing, it was only 2 games, right? But he was actually declining a little bit, but not in these 2 games. He was awesome.
Yeah, well, I don't think he was immune to the rookie wall either, despite the fact that he spent, a vast majority of the season in Greensboro. It's just playing and practicing for this long into the year that I think gets a lot of those players that are transitioning from college. So I don't think he was immune to it either. It was nice to see him get into these Dallas games and get a little bit more physical. These were great matchups for him. I'm not taking anything away from him.
Oh, they were.
Yeah, but I mean, the Mavs don't offer a Jonas Valanciunas. They don't offer the size and physicality that he faced against the Knicks. So, I mean, this was an opportunity for him to have a couple of big games, and he provided them. And again, a lot of it was getting on the back of Maxi Kleber and using that wingspan of a condor, as Eric Collins likes to say, and snagging these basketballs that the Mavericks didn't bother to go after. So, kudos to Mark for getting in there. I'm a little worried about the thumb. He's kind of messing with it. I felt like, especially in that second game, I saw him wince a couple of times. I don't want them to do anything that's going to exacerbate that injury because, honestly, Walker, I feel like the Hornets have a center. Like, after so long of watching, Spencer Hawes and what was left of Dwight Howard and Frank Kaminsky. Oh, my God. What are some other – just give me some Billy Hernan-Gomez, who I think we got to look at for like 2 seconds in one of these games.
Kind of like Billy, but not as much.
Everybody kind of liked Billy, but everybody knew that he wasn't the answer. It's like the Hornets we finally have a center, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that damaged in any way with this thumb injury.
Well, and Billy defensively was god-awful. He just could rebound everything. But yes, enough Billy Hernan-Gomez talk. With Mark Williams, him coming back, the thumb injury is a little scary. You do like to see, even if he is messing with it, it did not prohibit him from grabbing all of the rebounds. It did not prohibit him. Even with his touch, he was 5 of 7 from the free throw line. I'll take that. 70% and 68, a little above that on the season.
That's got to get better. I noted that in my notes.
Got to get a little better for sure.
It's got to get better.
So he was 75 in college, and we were celebrating him. If you're at 70, I'm okay with that. I mean, if you're 70 or above, and maybe even he could get better because he is a good mid-range shooter on the limited sample we've seen from him. We had the game against Phoenix where he knocked down a couple of mid-range jumpers. I like that. We know Steve Clifford has talked about his ability to shoot threes. He has the touch. So I guess you're right. With the context, given that Mark Williams has the touch, it probably should, you would hope it could get to somewhere close to 75 again, like he was shooting in college. And then hopefully he's able to draw more, right? I mean, when you throw it in there, 7 free throw attempts is nice against Dallas. but hopefully there can be some kind of consistency where he is going to the line quite a bit as the physicality is there from Mark, which is something that you hope continues to improve. But it was a nice start after the injury, what we got against Dallas.
And Clifford mentioned after the game that the Hornets are playing better defensively in part because they are starting Mark Williams, which I'm sure fans watching and listening to this show right now are going, duh. Like, you know, I mean, they were watching Mason Plumlee for so long and pining for Mark Williams. And I'm uncertain that they would have seen that same kind of impact through all 82 of these games had they started Mark Williams early on. It would have been a very rough learning process for him for quite a while. But to see that impact now is super exciting. And Clifford can't even really put his finger on it. But I mean, I think it's obvious. I think there are some things that are obvious, which is that, you know, Mark Williams, unlike Mason Plumlee, can scare some guys out of the paint. And, it's not just a constant barrage of attacks and rim makes, and the ball is having to move a lot more when he's on the floor from the opposing offense. That means you're getting a little bit deeper into the shot clock where mistakes can happen. It allows the guards to play a little bit more aggressive. I mean, I think some of these steals that have gotten them out into transition where they have to play in transition offensively or they're going nowhere. I mean, we've seen what happens when they have to play in the half court. They score 80 points. So all of that stuff works together, and it all means that the Charlotte Hornets play better when Mark Williams is on the floor.
Well, and even not only just driving guards out of the paint, but I think Brian Geisinger put this clip out where Mark is out there on the perimeter and they're switching and they're doing a whole bunch of action trying to switch guys. And Mark looked so not only did he look mobile, but he looked comfortable out there on the perimeter in a way that he should not, where we can go back to some clips where he was out there on the perimeter and he was shuffling his feet and he was doing a nice job of making sure he did not get driven by, but you could tell the happy feet almost exploited his fear a little bit too. You know, you're supposed to chop your feet, but also you could tell, okay, you know, he's hoping to God nobody drives by him here. Against Dallas, that clip, he just looked so much more comfortable where he knew exactly where to go. And I wonder just how much film session attaches to his brain and then he's able to use it so much like immediately on the court, where some guys you might have to be out there and then you take a little bit of a step back when you're, you know, watching film with the coach. But I wonder if, because he's missed a lot of time, he's missed a couple, 3 weeks, something like that. Mm-hmm. And this is the only thing you can really do with your thumb. You can move your feet still. I mean, you can do some sort of exercise. Mm-hmm. Cody Zeller would talk about how he was thankful when he got an upper body injury compared to a lower body injury. So he could still run and he could still do a whole bunch of stuff to keep him in shape. But with Mark, you know, sitting out quite a bit, for him to be able to learn a little bit more, that's awesome to see. So let's talk a little bit more about Mark. Speaking of being out there on the court, not going to be out there tonight. Coming up next, Locked On Hornets. Steve Clifford told us what to expect when it comes to the center rotation going forward the last 6 games of the regular season. No Mark tonight. What does that mean the rest of the way? We will talk about it in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The tournament Final Four is here. There's no better time to get in on the action than going to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook right now. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000, and that's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then what you can do is you can wager on everything from the money line to the point spreads to which team will be cutting down the nets. All on the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. Center rotation, Dennis Smith Jr. talk coming up next. Locked On Hornets.
This is Locked On Hornets.
And would I have liked to see a few more shards? No, I would not have.
That's also shards. That's also shards.
Only on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All All right, Doug. Steve Clifford told media yesterday what he plans to do with his center rotation. And so what he said is that he is going to play 2 bigs each game while the third one sits. This includes Mark Williams. It includes Nick Richards. It includes Kai Jones to finally get some center minutes, even if they've experimented quite a bit at the power forward spot. So after 2 games where we saw Mark Williams play, he will sit tonight against Oklahoma City while Nick Richards, assumingly, starts, and Kai Jones will come off of the bench. What do you make of this center rotation Steve Clifford is going to roll with to end the season?
I think it makes sense to me. I mean, I'd love to see Mark Williams out there every single game, but at the same time, he is dealing with an injury. He is wearing something, some kind of protective something on his thumb from that thumb sprain, and I did see him mess with it in that last game. And so, you know, while he's probably good enough to play, I'm fine with them doing that experiment because I don't think he's like 100%. I do hope. I don't want to see him put on ice, though, because I think it is important because he did play a lot in the G League. Every bit of NBA experience is going to matter as he gets ready to prepare this summer to take over the starting center position full-time next season. And also, I think they need to get a good look as possible at Kai Jones. They've already extended Nick Richards, that he's going to be part of the franchise unless he's rolled up in some kind of trade. But, you know, they already extended him, so it's time to look at Kai Jones and figure out where he fits, whether it's with this organization or as part of some kind of deal moving forward.
Well, and to be fair, Mark Williams, maybe not on ice. The thumb, if it swells up, I would advise it. I don't know what Joe Sharp is saying, but just the thumb needs the ice in case it swells up. So let's not get it twisted. The injury.
No,
is
let's
the
not.
thing
Seriously, let's not. I don't want him to get that thumb any more twisted.
No, yeah, I completely agree. If you look at Mark Williams, the injury is the thing that makes sense as to why you would sit him. If he was not injured, I don't know if I'd love it. And you know, part of me, there's this internal conflict, right? Part of me has the James Bouknight situation at the back of my mind, thinking, okay, if Mark Williams sits 2 more games the rest of the way, what does it really matter? He's going to get 4 of the 6 games played. He's still going to finish the season healthy and, you know, playing a majority of the possessions here, right? Mm-hmm. But if we go back to James Bouknight, who played 10 minutes, Doug, I mean, that's it. And here we are celebrating what 2 back-to-back possessions meant for James Bouknight, and all encompassing within the 10 minutes that he played. And so you're talking out of both sides out of your mouth if you don't have the injury at play here, because I think that's the thing that makes it okay, right? Like I think I'm cool with letting Mark Williams sit because of the injury. But if it's it's not that big of a deal. We got to see Kai Jones, which does matter at center. We got to see Nick Richards. We got to see all of them. They need ample playing time. But if we want to minimize what one game, what 10 minutes, 20 minutes might mean, then why are we celebrating it so much with James Bouknight? And so that's the only thing for me. It's okay. If he was healthy, then I might want to see Mark Williams out there because he's clearly the most important asset of all of the bigs. But the injury, I think that makes it okay for me to sit him a couple times just to make sure that we don't have some screw up at the end of the season. Well,
the big difference to me is that Mark Williams, through this limited time that we've seen him in the regular season, has proven that he can be an impact. He's proven that he can be an impact player, but he's also proven that the Hornets play better when he's on the floor. And so those are really, I mean, I think fans are looking for the impact player. They're looking for the 16 rebound games. I think Clifford is looking for, you know, does the team play better when he's on the floor? And I don't think there's a doubt about that. And so in that respect, there's little left to prove in these remaining 6 games. Now, he's got a lot to prove in terms of his overall game. Can he extend his shooting range? Can he play with a little bit more physicality when it comes to matchups where the opposing big offers a little bit more size and strength and willingness to bang down low? You know, is that something that he's going to be able to deal with or exploit in the future? He's got a lot of those things to prove, but I don't think he's going to prove those in these next 6 games. He's got to get into an off-season program, you know, and build up a little bit more muscle and figure things out. So that's why I think it's okay that you manage him a little bit and fully figure out this center rotation, knowing that he is your starting center. Like, there's no doubt. If there were a little bit of doubt about that and they decided to sit him, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, man. I mean, let's really fully see what Mark has. But there's no doubt he's the starting center.
Well, yeah, and you're right. Context matters a lot about James Bouknight just not providing anything, to be honest, this year. And the fact that he provided something in those 10 minutes, hey, we see it. There it is. You're right. The context does matter. At the same time, I think we can say, yeah, there are games that matter a lot, especially if you need something to last all offseason. So if Mark Williams, if we denied him an opportunity to go have another 20 and 15 performance or something like that, that would carry a lot. Everybody during the offseason would be referencing, hey, man, 20 and 15, the third to last game of the season. So anyways, the thumb injury, though, I think that matters. And by the way, like just the big matchups he'll have, it's not like you're going to be missing out on this really intriguing face-off between Mark and center X, whoever that is. Cleveland is the last one on the road, right? Mm-hmm. So the other games that you have, it's OKC tonight, and OKC, they're extremely tiny, but Mark's not playing anyway. So Chicago, Toronto back-to-back. Toronto is long and all across the board. I guess I don't know about any physical center they have. They have Houston April 7th and then Cleveland on the road. So those are the matchups they have.
Yeah, it is interesting that they are playing Oklahoma City because it was that game on December 29th where he had 17 and 13. That was like the Mark Williams sort of coming out party. And so he's proven everything that he has to prove against Oklahoma City. We don't need to see him play against Oklahoma City. But what we do need to see is Kai Jones not commit 2 or 3 offensive fouls in a game, not turn the basketball over, not make these back-breaking defensive mistakes in the pick and roll scheme. Those are the kind of things that we need to really pay attention to. I'll be watching Kai Jones closely tonight for my game notes. I'll be watching James Bouknight. No Gordon Hayward as well. It seems like just generally things are going to get weird over these 6 games, and I think we just have to roll with it because honestly, I think a lot of us, including me, I've been calling for this a lot sooner. And I didn't know that they had this in them, that Terry Rozier and Kelly Oubre were going to go out and that the Hornets were going to rally around that and get these 2 important wins against Dallas. But I think a lot of people have been wanting this kind of scenario where you're playing the young players significant minutes, you're resting some of the veterans, and you're getting ready for next season. They've wanted that a lot sooner, but here we are.
Yeah, I was about to say Gordon Hayward not playing. So now it's funny. Here we are with 2 weeks left to go in the regular season, and now they're full on tank mode, or they're full on. We don't care about winning these games.
Charlotte Storm, baby, get ready. Here we go.
That's it. 100%. So Kai Jones, I think that's clearly the number one. James Bouknight and Kai Jones. Those are the guys to watch, right? Maybe Bryce McGowan's, maybe in an increased role. What can you see from Bryce McGowan's? But it's clearly, okay, who are the youngest players? Let's point to them and then watch what they can do in this final 6-game stretch.
Well, it's going to be important for the veterans that are left, like DSJ, to really play well, and Maladon, too, to a certain extent. He's not like a crazy veteran, but he's been around for a few years. To help facilitate to some of these players and make sure that they're getting the ball where they need to get it so that they can have the best opportunity to show out. DSJ has been playing great. At times the offense is a little stinky. We know that. Although he hit some clutch 3-pointers in the fourth quarter of that first game against Dallas. He wanted those games against Dallas. I think we sometimes analyze players' return games to their teams, and we put a lot of that when some players just don't care. They're just like, yeah, I used to play for them, and it's fine. It's just another game for me. This was not another game for Dennis Smith Jr. He absolutely wanted to get one on his own team, or on his former team. He was out there nutmegging himself, passing in transition to Thor. He was high flying. He was knocking down clutch 3-pointers. He was delivering picture perfect passes. Just love everything that I saw from DSJ, who's playing with an intensity level that honestly has been rare, not just this season, but from the Hornets in general. This is what I've always wanted. These players that are just super intense. They get into the other team. They're jawing with the other team, but they also they put the effort in. And for him, it's on the defensive end of the floor where he's just an absolute beast. I love it. They've got to re-sign this guy. If they don't, then I don't know that they're really committed to winning next season.
Well, and DSJ's career pretty interesting too, because he's drafted a high draft pick with the Dallas Mavericks, and it's not that they give up on him. I guess they kind of do, but they trade him for Kristaps Porzingis, and that was when Porzingis, we all were kind of like, wait, okay, this is a great trade for Dallas. You're going to pair him with Luka Doncic. You have your big with your guard. They could both shoot threes, and then it eventually just never worked out because of the lack of availability for Porzingis. And then Dennis Smith Jr. in New York, that just never took off either. And so, it's like, okay, this is the team that drafted him and then traded him not too long after to get a bigger star. And so you wondered how Dennis Smith felt about that. Apparently didn't feel too great. And, Dallas more so than New York, right? Where you might get the win against the Knicks, but DSJ certainly had words against Dallas more so than he did against the Knicks or, any other team that kind of signed him to, whether it be a 10-day or just a little bit longer, but not an actual, standard contract or anything like that. He's a real one, as it says in the graphic. There's no doubt about that.
And one more thing, like we talk about the offense not being there. We've seen the 1-8 nights from the floor, and I accept that. But I'll also say that those kind of things tend to stand out when you don't have any other significant offensive weapons on the floor, or you do in Terry Rozier and Kelly Oubre, but those two offensive weapons are really taking a lot of the oxygen out of the offense because there are no ball movers, facilitators. The offense slows down a lot when they're on the floor. So I would say that, let's get DSJ, hopefully a healthy DSJ, into next season in the scheme that they always wanted to play with everyone healthy. And I think you would see a similar DSJ that we saw early this season, who was a little bit more locked in offensively.
Yeah, no, and especially with his ability to pass too. He's proven that despite him going, 1 of 8 in some of these. So yeah, the ability to get others their shot, I think, matters as well. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast. We've been telling you players to watch during the NCAA tournament, and now all of those players are out of the NCAA tournament. It's been kind of a goose egg for a lot of the top prospects that the Charlotte Hornets could consider. And then some Duke Blue Devil news maybe to watch out for. We'll talk a little bit more about that coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
This is Locked On Hornets.
I'm a fantastic Googler. I'm bad at logging in. If they were to do sort of a scouting report of me and my ability to use the internet.
Todd.
Yeah,
excellent Googler, not a very good guy that's logging in. Very good at interrupting the host anytime he's trying to go on a rant.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Well, Doug, when we've told people to watch a couple of the prospects in the big dance, we're like, all right, well, at least this team survived. It's not like they had a great performance from their star player. They got to the second round. Eventually, they got to the Sweet 16. But now they're all gone. Doug, if you look at the Final Four, nobody is going to be drafted in the top 10. And it's going to be the first time that's happened in the Final Four since 1990. I know Roger Sherman put out a tweet, and he's a part of the Ringer, where he said, if you look at all of the top players in this NCAA tournament field, as far as top 10 or even top 20, if you go a top 20, you're not getting anybody that's going to be drafted if you go even, extend the range even that far, right? Like it might be at 20 where you see one of these guys go. So UConn, FAU, San Diego State, and then who's the other team that I'm missing here? Miami. Thank you. Miami. Those are the teams.
Just thank yourself.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was saying thank you that I was able to get that.
Thank you, Brian.
100%. Yeah, nobody is going to be drafted really high. So Brandon Miller's out. Jarris Walker's out. 2 1 seeds get dropped in the Sweet 16. You didn't have Keontae George. I know we talked about him. Baylor's, number 2 offense in the country. They got bounced early. Does that worry you if you're the Hornets and you're selecting in a range where, okay, maybe Wemby's gone, maybe Scoot's gone. Now you're left with Brandon Miller and the Thompson twins, who did not flame out of the tournament because they didn't play. How do you strategize around this, or do you at all?
Well, I was hoping that they would all get bounced, honestly, because I didn't want anyone to sort of fall in love with a player and maybe rate them a little bit higher on their board because they won a couple of games in March. Like, winning is obviously important, but single players don't necessarily influence the game in that way all the time. And especially in the randomness that is the tournament and the randomness that has become college basketball. And part of that randomness is the fact that you do have Victor overseas, Scoot playing at G League Unite, the Thompson twins playing at Overtime Elite. The top talent isn't in college basketball anymore. And so, these evaluations are a little bit silly at this point. What if Brandon Miller were playing alongside Scoot Henderson, or Brandon Miller was playing alongside an Amen Thompson? Would it be different? Would Alabama have cruised through the tournament? And would it be fair to think any different of Brandon Miller because, they got to the tournament or got to the final or didn't get to the Final Four? So no, I think it's all a little bit silly. I think you are doing all of it's a gamble because all these kids are 19 years old. That's the other thing too. If we were sitting here having a conversation about, a Nick Smith Jr. or a Keontae George in their third season, not having made a Final Four the whole time, then you start to go, okay, what's going on there? Why can't this person get that get that team over the hump? Well, we're not talking about that anymore because, these guys are all coming out so early. So I'm just glad that, a Brandon Miller or Nick Smith Jr. didn't make this big run, and then we go, okay, well, maybe let's bump them up a couple of slots and it starts to influence our reasoning a little bit.
Yeah, I know there's been, I forget where they are. I know there have been studies that said, like, the NCAA tournament's not the greatest indicator of NBA success. I mean, it's not something that you need to put a whole lot of weight in. So, no, I'm still drafting Brandon Miller based off what I've seen from him throughout the regular season, despite an NCAA tournament where maybe he didn't perform all that well. And Jarris Walker, he had 16 points in this last game, but just the efficiency wasn't there. So, it's not like he was atrocious, right? He still contributed in a lot of different areas of the box score, but just still to not see any of them get to the Final Four, that's a little interesting. And the last thing is, if you look at the last pick that the Hornets are going to have in the first round, wherever the Denver Nuggets finish up, Tyrese Proctor from Duke, he is going to return. He's going to come back. And that guy was awesome at the end of their run. He was the only one that could provide any offense for them whatsoever. And he's a really good perimeter defender too. And now we're all kind of wondering if Kyle Filipowski is going to go back to Duke. And Kyle Filipowski would have been super interesting. Somebody that is skilled, that is a big guy, that has the ability to shoot threes, and really came on strong at the end of the tournament, the ACC tournament, I should say, and really the end of the regular season. So just a couple of names to keep eyes on, right? Like, if you wanted Filipowski, you were interested in Tyrese Proctor, I don't know what Dariq Whitehead is going to do. He probably goes, but who knows at this point? So maybe a couple guys you have your eyes on, they might just go back to college if they are in that range of being selected with the Hornets' second pick in the first round.
It's always a threat. I mean, this list of prospects that I have here on my Every Hornets box score big board is going to change pretty significantly when we get to that early entry withdrawal deadline, which isn't until – I think a lot of these guys will declare this before then, but it's not until June 12th. The draft is June 22nd.
A lot of people go right up to the deadline, too. I mean, people will wait for sure because you're getting all this information.
Yeah, the combine's in May. I don't know if we have a date on that yet. The lottery's on May 16th, and the early entry deadline is June 12th. So, yeah, the sport's going to shift and move. And I don't even know, Walker, if I believe that the Hornets are even going to make that second pick in the first round.
Yeah, they might.
It's going to be Denver's pick. It's going to be 28, 29. They've got their own second round pick too, which, depending on how the lottery shakes out honestly, either way that the lottery shakes out, it's going to be within 10-ish picks. But it could be essentially virtually the same pick, maybe two off. So, depending on how the lottery shakes out. So, I don't know, do you even make that pick? Do you try to package that pick? Because the Hornets have been a little reticent to keep 2 first-round picks in the past due to the financials that go along with that, the guaranteed money that you have to commit when you pick anyone in the first round. So, I don't know.
Doug, do you want to see them trade up? You've always been one that has been has been a little leery of them taking the guy that falls. That is something where I don't want to take the guy that falls anymore. I want to take the guy that is rising up draft boards. So do you want to see the Hornets be aggressive and show some vindication in trading up in a first round? Now, I guess they did that with Kai. I forgot about how they did do that with Kai Jones, and that's not necessarily working out as it stands currently. So is that something you'd want to see from them in a deep draft? Could you get up even further to go get your player by trading that Denver pick, trading the second, whatever else, or maybe that would be it? Is that something that you'd be interested in?
Well, no, again, assuming that they're going to make that first pick, I just don't see them doing that. And there's nobody in the middle of this draft that I'm really falling in love with yet. I mean, maybe as I continue to do the study.
It's a long time. You're going
it is a long
buddy.
time. I don't see now. Let's say the Hornets, fall back a few spots and go 6 or whatever. I don't see anyone necessarily falling precipitously from 3 all the way to 6, other than maybe Brandon Miller. I see guys moving up. I see guys rising to 5 or 4 away from the Hornets if they were to get the 6th pick. Guys like George or Cam Whitmore, they might be one pick away from some of these guys. But I really think the top 5 or so, I think it's gonna get pretty locked in as we head into draft day. I don't see, one guy making a big fall.
Well, and I was just even talking about the second first round pick that the Hornets had. If you were, but yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting. We'll see this. We do have a lot of time. God, when you said the combine is in May, and then the decision is, we got so much. We are ready for it to
got a lot of wingspan talk ahead of us,
know.
my friend.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
I saw
All
Cam
right.
Whitmore. I see some people saying Cam Whitmore's wingspan is 7 feet. And some people saying Cam Whitmore's wingspan is 7'3". I mean, wowza.
Big disparity.
I'm starting to love Cam Whitmore, honestly. I'm digging into his tape a little bit. I love it. A little Matrix Reloaded. Sean Marion.
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure. We'll get to more on Cam Whitmore as the season goes on, as the offseason goes on. Thanks for making us your first listen today. Make your second listen Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.
He plays like Sean Marion. That's what I was saying there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.